Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I have no idea why you invited me. I'm not a historian. A, B, I don't really work specifically on late Soviet or Soviet. But, I put some things together. I threw some things together, which I'm sorry you had to suffer through reading, and have come up with what I call the intervention. And I've been doing this for the last 4 or 5 years. It's no longer a presentation, it's just an intervention. So I wanted to talk about nature today. We all know that, my chair is calling, I'm so sorry because I'm also teaching today, as if. Okay. So the problems that I've seen so far, I think the problems with taxonomy, the problems with terminology, the problems with kind of historical periodization, those are all hard to define, and so you'll see some of that in my intervention and this particular piece of work that I'm working on right now. So we all know that the relationship between humans and ecological environment is fundamental to our daily existence. Beyond satisfying basic human needs, ecological environment is the main resource for humans' creation and reproduction of culture and society. It ensures historical continuity, central to leading meaningful lives. Natural landscape, such as trees, caves, rocks, and springs, are a part of the ecological environment. Can the stories told by natural landscape in the late Soviet period, Central Asia, become a source of empowerment for rethinking gender and ecological justice locally and elsewhere in a contemporary society? That's a question. So in order for me to answer that question, I had to come up with methodology. And so I created this, I'm sure I'm not the first one who has used this word, but I decided to use remembering, not just remembering as a sort of a exercise of memory, but remembering as in putting things together, taking them apart and putting them together, remembering, creating a different landscape, whether it is sort of narrative landscape or maybe theoretical landscape or an activist landscape. So I put different parts, bits and pieces of poetry, personal experiences, stories, and histories together to create a narrative that helps to understand religion and culture in the late Soviet Central Asia and works to address some of the contemporary issues. By remembering such things as writings and the works by Russian imperial, by Russian contemporary, by Soviet, by Central Asian, European, and American scholars, writing about history, archaeology, ethnography, heritage, gender, feminism, and theology, writing in the 19th, 20th, and 21st century, and including my ethnographic research in the Fergana Valley in 2002/2003 and 2011, and including my personal experiences, I'm going to try to answer that question. So remember all those similarly desperate bits and pieces together. So a Native American activist, her name is Andy Smith, reminds that some of the most important resources for social change are not theories from the elsewhere, written elsewhere by someone else, but our local heritage, which I take to be a social and cultural process mediating a sense of cultural, social, and political change. This heritage refers to vital and lived activities that vigorously engage with thinking about and acting out not only where we have come from in the terms of the past, but also where we're going in terms of the present and future. The heritage activities such as this are about meaning making and about remembering as a memory exercise. They affirm some relations and challenge others and take place in space. They ensure passing of knowledge and include human actions accompanied by affect and emotion. Such activities confirm relationships between actions and places, humans and land, and establish and express identity. Both experience and performance of heritage are inextricably linked to national identity and a sense of belonging to a community. As such, they can sometimes endorse, other times transform or reject established power relations in any given social unit, because cultural meanings created through performance and experience of one's heritage are also very much dynamic. So as a part of Central Asian heritage, I focus on activities that took place at its natural shrines, or another local word for it is mazars, of the late Soviet period. Quotidian. I want to look at quotidian matters in the Soviet Central Asia. What are those quotidian matters? The matters of byt, каждодневная жизнь, or hayot, right, жизнь. Some of those quotidian matters are issues with health and wellness and overall well-being. They enabled and encouraged visitation and veneration of mazars in the late Soviet period. More specifically, in the context of Soviet systematic attack on and control of organized religion, these practical concerns and local women's active participation in, hereabout, and sociocultural responsibility for nurturing relationships within their extended families and local communities ensured continuity of their vital practices and ceremonial leadership. These practical daily concerns, the quotidian concerns, kept local heritage dynamic and mazars visitations alive. Women's effort to preserve the well-being and inner values of the community and the Soviet state's tolerance and adoption and even encouragement, and we've seen some of that in the presentations below before, where the Soviet state does not simply negate or persecute certain ritual practices, but encourage some of them and label them via the work of Soviet ethnographers as nationalные традиции or national traditions, ensured continuity and introduced change in cultural knowledges associated with practices focusing on individual and communal well-being. Hence, among local, mainly, but not exclusively women, visits to ritual practice at and veneration of local mazars continued despite Soviet discouragement and persecution, while the strategic inaction of local authorities helped to avoid punishment for breaking Soviet laws on religion. Heritage is not only a tool of governance, again, some of your papers have talked about that, but also a tool of opposition and subversion. It is an important resource in challenging received identity and cultural social values. Hence, heritage is dynamic and can become a tool of opposition to dominant cultural values. And if this is indeed true, then nothing precludes us from using natural shrines, a part of local heritage, during the late Soviet period as a resource in struggle for gender and ecological justice in contemporary society. I am a woman. Yes, I am. Everywhere I go, I bring my body with me. This body could tell about its potential to face the ultimate life-giving test, the test of holding two or more hearts, one in the chest, and other ones in the abdominal, all at the same time. While pregnant, this body can bear down, throbbing and breathing in and out in short increments, trembling, tearing, and burning. It could give birth. I know about this potential from others, and inside and through my body. What happens if I cannot pass this test, the test of being who I can become? What if I cannot eat for 2 or 3, feel the morning sickness and the extra heartbeats and the kicking of the little extremities? What if I cannot hold inside me the life yet to be lived, the one that would be constantly changing and pushing through my skin, getting ready to break free, meet the world? Where would this life go? Searching desperately for answers, I ask for help. I ask the nature. I go to a tree. When I am a tree, I give life. I regenerate. Chop me down, I will grow back. My branches again will touch the sky, and my roots again will dwell inside the earth. When I am a tree, I am strong. My trunk is wide and grounded. A bitter sap, the blood of my fibrous veins run thick. When I am a tree, I am powerful. I am hard and resilient. I bounce and I withstand. I prosper and I give. When I am a tree, I go on. I am limitless. I bloom and bear seeds. They travel with the wind here and there and grow to become trees. And we go on. We continue to stretch towards the sky and feed on and drink from the earth. And by fertilizing the earth with our shrubs, we regenerate her. When I am a tree, I feel I am a living being. Touch me, hold me, wrap your hands around me. When I am a tree, I am generous. Eat of me, of my bark, drink of my sap, take my life-giving power. Look at my branches, my limbs. I spread them wide and let them run wild in the air. My leaves breathe and make breeze. My crown is a whispering life stream. It creates shadow, providing for other living beings. It beckons, come and rest, put your head down. When I am a tree, I am the earth, the air, and the hearth. I may stand alone, but I am never lonely. The life always dwells inside me. I wrote this piece because I wanted to put in a poetic form the words that I have received from and the stories that I have heard from local individuals, both male and female, majority of cases female, about their experiences with the earth, their experiences with surrounding environment, and their concerns with quotidian issues and quotidian problems. All right, so in the late Soviet Central Asia, the concerns with biological reproduction, familial and communal health and wellness were addressed by drawing on multiple resources, including scientific or medicinal treatment, including religious rituals, natural remedies, and local healers, and including visitation to mazars to cure an illness or to restore or maintain health and overall well-being. What is mazar? Mazar can be used in reference to a burial place or of a person, often a saint, with a dome-like structure that marks the place. Yet many such sites in Central Asia have no actual graves or burials. The symbolic center of such mazars is a natural object, rather, such as a tree or a stone or a cave or a lake. I focus on such sites since they continue to be important places of ritual activities in post-Soviet Central Asia as well. Since it's only 10 minutes. All right. So during the early Soviet period, many places for religious observance, including mosques and mazars, were destroyed, transformed, or altered, and mass visitations of local shrines was prohibited. Yet the Soviet struggle against so-called pilgrimages to holy places had to proceed without evoking, quote unquote, and I'm here quoting from the Soviet sources, the party sources. They had to proceed without evoking dissatisfaction among the population. So despite the party's orders to strip historical value of such sacred sites as the Shahi Mardon Monument Mausoleum and to demolish it, such sites continue to be pilgrimage sites. The party attempts to reassign some sacred sites as sanatoria, pioneer camps, historical monuments, and clubs were not completely successful either, since pilgrims came to these sites as holidaymakers to spend their vacation. And while some mazars were being closed by the party organs, the new ones were being opened or created by local women at the same time, by local people at the same time. Finally, in the late Soviet period, the widespread rationalization that certain natural places and resources, such as spring water, could have relaxing, healing, and strengthening effect on humans ensured visitation of local sacred places, where the center of the ritual activity would be a natural element such as a tree or a rock or a water spring. By the way, by the late 1980s, pilgrims to local sacred sites, or pilgrimages to local sacred sites, such as the mountain of Tahti Suleiman in Osh, were completely, quote-unquote, reborn. Mass gatherings became commonplace and ideologically acceptable. So I wanted to look at the fertility and mothering to basically summarize, broadly speaking, in the Soviet Central Asia, the concerns with fertility, the concerns with well-being and health of the family members was not an exclusive activity of local women. Men were involved in it too. However, women were affected by health and wellness of their offspring more, by a lack of it, more than local men were. And so it was very often women, not men, who resorted to visiting sacred sites. Now, one way of dealing with fertility and learning about mothering is to actually experience in it. And so what happened to me is, as an ethnographer who was doing participant observation, it wasn't just about being there and seeing stuff, it was also about doing it and approaching it in a critical fashion. So one of the things that I actually did, I participated in several fertility rituals, and one of them was going and getting a piece of neonatal hair that were to be kept with me for a period of time that would ensure my fertility and would make me pregnant in the next 2 years, which actually did happen to me. And I am very happy to report that thanks to that ritual, I have a 14-year-old right now, so I have experienced that. So this is actually one of the sites, and that's the hair that traveled now all over the place through the Canada, United States, and Russia, leaving happy parents and healthy children behind. So fertility. One of the famous mazars in the Fergana Valley, often visited by local women in the late Soviet period, was Mazar Haji Baror, located near the city of Margilon. This ceremonial complex sits above the burial ground, or it is said that it's on the top of the burial ground of a Saint Haji Barur. Haji Barur would be something like Mr. Luck, Mr. Gentleman Luck, Mr. Luck. The complex was built in the 70s. The previous one was destroyed in 1960s, and only the trees survived. So these elm trees were the attraction of the mazar. Pilgrims used their sap orally and topically because it was said to have healing power. So that's but one example. This picture actually comes from that particular mazar. The picture has been taken in 2004. However, based on the interviews that I have conducted and people I spent time with, this site has been used throughout the Soviet period, in the early and what some people refer to as the late Soviet period, so prior to perestroika. There is another very important, interesting place, famous place near Kharezm. It's called Chile Mulberry Tree. This is a sacred tree where you can go with your a child. If your newborn is sick, you would take the dupa, the skull hat, and throw it at the roots of the tree, and the sacred power would enter the dupa, and then you can bring it back home, put it on your child, and your child will be healed. There are several scholars Soviet scholars, and one of the resources that I used are Soviet ethnographers, in addition to Russian imperial, contemporary Russian, and European and American. So some of the Soviet scholars have pointed out that there are plenty of places like that, and pretty much each one of them has a medicinal specialty. So one place would, for example, heal children's bedwetting. Another place would heal eye illness and infertility. Yet another place would heal bronchitis and asthma with the help of, for example, water and 11 poplar trees at the Kuk Terak Buva Mazar in Kazakhstan. And then in the Navai region, there was a mazar that had special clay that it was said to help you with the health skin issues if you had pimples or so on. So there are plenty of sites in Central Asia that are like that. I know I have to finish up pretty soon, so this is a really interesting ritual where large boulders, become natural shrines. These boulders, like this one, is called Tishik Tosh. The picture comes from the Hamza Hakimzadeh Museum in Shahimardan. So the majority of times, these sites in the late Soviet period would be visited by women with children. So infertile women would have to come in contact with the boulder, put their stomach, abdominal area on the boulder, where children would be turned upside down and put their head in the indentation in the boulder, and was said to have sacred powers, special healing powers, and would either ensure fertility or ensure health for the children. One more example that I think is very interesting is the use of earth, of clay or dirt itself. And one of the quotes too comes from the party archives. For example, party archives report that in 1967, about 40-60 women visited Ogur, which is a place in Andijan. Which was said to be a burial site, although of course nobody has ever ascertained whether there is a real body buried there or not, but it was said to. So what women would do, they would roll in the dust, and so the document says, women visited this site on Wednesdays to perform rituals, certain rituals like rolling in the dust or rubbing the dust on their skin, because this site was said to have healing and life-giving power. Because of that, pilgrims had to come in a very close contact with it. All right, so what does it all mean, I guess? Can those examples become the sources or resources that we could use in contemporary society? Here's just some pictures, a very good publication by Galina Aitpaeva in the 2007. She and her group has documented tons of sacred sites, such as the one I'm referring to in Kyrgyzstan. Gulnara. Belina. We're not at 5, yes. All right, what's the conclusion? The conclusion is, human beings are innately tied to land, among other things. The land provides sustenance and shelter and stories that inform individual and social identity. In Central Asia, local people heavily depend on their own, in Soviet times perhaps collectivized, subsistence production, hence the land was equally important for agriculturalists and pastoralists. The well-being of the land, the well-being of the people, land's fecundity and human fertility, biological and social, were intimately interconnected. The sacred triad, water, earth, plants, had a strong ritual importance in daily life of Soviet Central Asians. These three elements were and continue to be the focus of local people's pilgrimages to and corresponding ritual practices at several mazars, particularly the visits that respond to the quotidian issues, such as issues with health and wellness. If nature could talk, what stories would it tell us? Well, I think that these ritual activities at such sacred sites are not simply meaningful or meaning-making, they are also ethical. Care for each other's well-being transcends religious boundaries as much as it transcends academic disciplines defining or debating these boundaries. A human desire to be and belong to something like family or community transcends these boundaries as well. So in this assemblage that I have tried to remember, to put together, I see a story about mothering, which in contemporary society we need more and not less. First of all, if we love children, and indeed, the local proverb would say a house without children is like a burial site, right? So if we love children, you got to love the birther in the first place. But mothering is not just about birth, it is more importantly about care for the self and others. Hence, this mothering, not limited to a female ability to give birth, must be respected on its own terms. Going on a pilgrimage aimed at health and wellness of others or ourselves gives us mothering centered on ethics of care and empathy, whether we are to become mothers or not. This ethic is central to gender justice. And one last point, the care for, veneration of, reverence, and gentle use of the powerful environmental resources offered by such mazars with natural objects tell us a whole lot about our deep connection with the ecological environment. Pilgrimages described above are potent reminders of human fertility, that our fertility and our health depends on the fecundity and health of the land, on the life-giving power of water and life-generating power of trees. We are not apart from, but a part of this environment. In our efforts to preserve ecological environment, we would benefit from remembering this.
Thank you.
Thank you.